Hello and welcome to Premiere Scene. My name is Nicola Johnston and we're here this evening at Curzon Mayfair for the premiere of Resistance.
Swindon, Oxford.
Yes, here it is. My name's Captain Wolfram. We've established an observation post in this valley. We'll be here for a week, perhaps two.
I play Maggie Jones, who's a very strong matriarchal figure who, when the women discover the men have disappeared, she realises she has to sort of take hold of the situation and look after all the others, particularly Sarah Lewis, who's very vulnerable and not really part of the farming community. And gradually, she takes on a role she's not used to taking as a leader because her husband and the men used to do that. They have to look after the farm, and she becomes stronger and stronger and more of a leader as it goes on. And very pragmatically, she deals with the Germans and finds a way of making them help without calling herself a collaborator. Really, she treads a really, really fine line. But then, of course, as things grow, she becomes determined to leave the valley and go to the show with her horse, which leads to the very tragic conclusion. And so, in fact, her determination to lead and take over really becomes a downfall in a sense.
It's quite sad, really, then, for the character. She seems to go on this massive journey and then has the downfall at the end.
Yes.
What happens to her after that? Does it destroy her as a character?
It destroys her. She becomes completely broken, which made it very interesting to play, of course.
And through the process of filming, what challenges did you face as an actress?
As an actress, the cold and the mud were one of the most wonderful things in the end, was getting to know the horse called Seldom Seen, because although I have worked with horses before, it's been quite a few years, and I didn't have to ride him, but I had to get to know him and be comfortable around him. It's this huge Welsh cob, and so I spent a lot of time on the farm leading him around, this huge muscular animal, and I got really, really attached to him. It was a rather wonderful part of it, and then at the end, when the disaster, the tragedy happens, it did have a tremendous meaning for me.
Why hasn't he said anything about the men?
He knows. It's enough.
We don't even know where they're yet.
I got the flock to look after, the pigs, the slates on the barn to fix. You know what happens to collaborators, Maggie, do you?
Obviously, you're a writer and also a poet. When you wrote this novel, could you see it on the cinema screen?
Not while I was writing it, and I think that's the way it should be. I think that if you write a novel with half an eye on the film, all you end up doing is writing a bad novel. But having said that, when I think about the period when I was writing it, one of my flatmates at the time was a screenwriter, and I'm aware that we did spend, we'd both be working in our separate rooms, then we'd meet up and have lunch, and we did take a lot of time talking about, the different engines of storytelling between my novel and his screenwriting. So I do sometimes wonder if actually that did sort of seep into my writing process. And I did write the novel scenically, but I think it was only when it was published and I did a few readings, and some people at readings were saying, is there going to be a film? And that's really how this started. In that Amit came over to see me in New York, and just before he left, I gave him the novel and said, look, you let me know what you think. And God bless him, he read it on the plane and said that he'd like it to be his first feature. So.
What were your inspirations for the novel?
Well, I think in the same way that most novels are, the story and the inspirations were seeded in many, many places. I mean, one of the most important places is actually the landscape, the physical territory where it is set, the Black Mountains in South Wales, where I'm from. And it was really, I was in a process of researching that area and this historical pattern of people being led to believe, because of these isolated valleys, that they could live in a different way. It was while I was doing that I came across the story of the auxiliary units, Britain's secret civilian insurgency in World War II. And really, the idea, not so much of the auxiliary units themselves, but more the people who they would have left behind. That idea and this historical pattern in the valleys, it was when those intersected that the novel was really born. And then obviously, once I realised to do that, I had to set it in an alternative version of the Second World War. I threw myself into what is a pretty established kind of subgenre of alternative Second World War fiction, from The Plot Against America, The Man in the High Castle, SSGB and Fatherland and those kind of things. But I should probably mention one very specific inspiration. It was a propaganda film that was made during the Second World War, set in Wales, called The Silent Village, I think, and it was what they did in the film was that they replayed the incidents that had happened recently in a Czech village in Wales as a way of saying to the British public, this could happen here. And I think that was definitely...
It's almost like the what if.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and that was in my mind. So, I mean, to a certain extent, that is the novelist's job, is to always say what if. It was just, in the case of this story, I sort of pushed it into a very well-known historical context.
This is it, George. You're on your own now.
I never thanked you for helping me.
You shouldn't thank me. You should hate me. I understand this.
Look, I don't know what I've disturbed here.
What does it?
Why you're not wearing uniform.
Jesus.
What happened, Maggie? What did you hear, Maggie? About William and Tom?
Comparing reading the novel and then reading the film script, how did the two compare?
Well, I think the script moves quite closely along the novel, and Owen Sheers, he also co-wrote the script, which I thought was a good thing, and so kind of transports the spirit of the novel very well.
Was Owen Sheers around on the film set for you guys to talk to?
Yeah, he was in and out kind of thing. Yeah, I think he was there on my first day. So I had a nice little chat to him about the novel and you know, about the character and stuff and what he thought, and yeah, so it was good to have him around.
And this is obviously Amit's debut feature film. What was it like working with him as a director?
Well, I would have never thought that this is Amit's first feature film, because it was really, he knew exactly what he wanted, and at the same time he gave us a lot of space to develop our own ideas. So it was pretty good. In the end, you had the feeling that you were creating something together.
And for yourself, how was it working with Amit?
It was great, yeah. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, again, I'd say exactly the same thing. He knew what he wanted, and he was really interested to hear what we had to say about the characters. But you know, the great thing about working from a novel is that you've got such a rich character that's already been written out for you, and you can sort of use all the bits from the novel to sort of create your role. Yeah, but it was great working with him. He was brilliant.
You come from a theatrical background as well. How does working in the theatre compare to working in film?
The disciplines are very, very different. I mean, I would say for me, a lot of the influence I've taken into film has been theatre and photography. I've taken lots of photographs, so the two things work quite well together. But working with actors is something I've done a lot in theatre, and I think that has really helped working in film, and working on a film like this where it's very much an actor's piece, you know. So I think the two things overlap incredibly, and I think there's a real tradition in the UK of theatre and film having that kind of overlap.
Obviously, with Owen's wonderful writing, I mean, you were blessed with such a fantastic story. When you read the novel, did you suddenly have this vision of seeing it on the big screen? Absolutely.
I read the novel and I knew immediately I'd like to turn it into a film. I knew from almost the first page. There were some certain images that I'd read and then changed visually or adapted visually, as you do when you're thinking about a feature film. And it just started becoming a film in my head very, very quickly. So
sounds so exciting. And it was a collaborative thing between the two of you, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Owen and I had a ball doing this. I pitched him the way I would like to work on this film and make this film, and that appealed to him. And then we co-wrote the screenplay very quickly. And we had a really good time doing it. And then at the point the screenplay finished, I went off to make the film. Owen was around, and I could turn to him if I needed some advice or rewrites. But you know, he was very, very respectful about me going to make the film, because at the point that you're directing a film, you have to have a vision to go and do that, and that needs to be very clear, especially when you're working very quickly. You know, and we shot the film in 5 weeks, which is very fast.
That is extremely fast. What kind of did problems arise from that? I mean, if you could have had longer, would you have chosen to have had a longer period?
I think people would always have longer, but we know from the outset it would be a 5-week shoot, and so you can't complain of things going wrong when you know what the parameters are. And I think it was an intense shoot, but I think we had a great crew and a great cast, and there was a lot of energy about it. and we just kept on pushing and kept on moving, and there was a really good, it was, the atmosphere on set was very good.
You build up a momentum, don't you? And also, I think the weather was very kind to you.
The weather was extraordinarily kind. We had prepared for things going wrong. Mentally, we were prepared, and we thought, whatever the weather does, we'll have to embrace it and react to it. But as things went along, the weather was extremely kind. There were days when we were having quite severe storms outside, but we were shooting interiors. And the amazing thing about these beautiful old houses, the walls are so thick you can't hear anything. So, we'd be shooting interior scenes at Sarah's house, and we'd go outside, and bits of props are flying all over the place because it was so wet and windy.
There will come a time when people will just want this to stop. And more than anything, they'll just want to survive.
Good writing and storytelling is so important. So after you read the novel and then the screenplay, how did this affect you as an actress?
Well, it came to me the other way round, actually, because it's so fortunate. It happened with Brighton Rock as well. It was so fortunate that was the only Graham Greene novel I hadn't read, or one of a few that I hadn't read, because I like Graham Greene an awful lot. And again, so fortunate I hadn't read this, because if you read the book, you'll know that she knows the reality of the situation, Sarah. I mean, I'd be reading the reality of the situation. Whereas in the script, she has no idea where her husband's disappeared to, or the other men, or any idea of any sort of resistance force. So the book was a very different thing to the script, and that was something that Owen and Amit, and this is something you can ask them, it's not really my territory, but it's something that they very much wanted, for it to be different.
I mean, they collaborated together on the screenplay, and also collaborated with you, the actors, as well. How was that for you?
How was it? In what sense?
Working with a writer and the director together.
Oh, well, I always felt like my first port of call was Amit, being the director. That's not to say that Owen's presence wasn't huge on set. That's not to say that he was there all the time, or that we all coexisted very happily, artistically. But it felt like he was there as a support. Anytime we needed to iron something out, or there was just... Sometimes there are little parts of the story that you may not have absorbed or missed, or emotionally you might just need... there might be something missing in the script that was there in the book.
One more question for you. When the audience come to see the film, what would you hope them to take away with them after seeing it?
This is the question. This is one of the most popular questions that you get asked, which is, and it's probably, again, it's a director's question as opposed to an actor's question. But once you remove yourself objectively from a piece and you stop being so very much inside of it, you can only really hope that people receive something from it. I'm so very passionate about it that it's affirming any time that I find out that something I've been passionate about, somebody else is passionate about, of course, as you know, with any piece of work that you do artistically.
But what we have to ask ourselves is, how do we want to survive? What is worth surviving for?
Sarah, we must leave.
No, I can't leave.
But if you stay now, then you'll die.
And you can catch Resistance from the 25th of November. Thank you for watching Premiere Scene.